if I was to give somebody a piece of advice, it would be get out of your head, right? And start to exude the kind of person that you know you can be, that you should be, that the world needs. Be that person every day.
Hello and welcome to Pillars of Wealth Creation, where we talk about creating financial success with a special focus on business and real estate. I'm your host, Todd Dexheimer. Now, let's get to it. Hello and welcome back to Pillars of Wealth Creation. I'm your host, Todd Dexheimer. Excited to have Chris Roberts on the show today. Chris, how are you doing today?
I'm amazing today, but I try to start my day with that attitude, regardless of if I'm amazing or not.
Yeah, I think that's super important, by the way. Every morning, I take my dog for a walk and we got woods in our backyard. So it's nice. It's peaceful. Like I don't think I've seen a person in the last like 2 weeks as I go for a nice walk back there. And while I do that, I pray. And one of the biggest parts of my prayer is just being like thankful. And it's abundant and it's this beautiful day. And I'm excited for and part of it's, prayer and thanking God, but the other part of it is that mental, like you just got to be thankful for what you've got going on. Like what I know there might be a storm happening in your life, but you still got to be thankful for the good things
Yeah,
that are going on. So
I love it.
yeah.
Yeah, I just if I may, my wife and I have this conversation all the time because it's very easy, regardless of your circumstance, to
Yeah.
complain and
Oh,
get caught up in the
100%.
humdrum of life and just sort of get into the muck of all of it, right? Because if you think about back in the day, it was really just about survival, food, shelter, et cetera.
Yeah.
But we have so many things drawing our attention away, right? So, like you said, it is a conscious effort to get in the right state of mind. And what I love about that, especially if you have a significant other, or a really good friend or someone, a family member you can bounce ideas off of and just sort of check yourselves and say, hey, is our life really that bad? Or are the circumstances really that bad? Have I faced anything like this before? Do I know anyone
Right.
else is going through something much, much worse? To really kind of ground you, because it's so easy, right? And we actually just last night we were having that conversation. So it's funny you bring that up because you just got to check yourself sometimes, because it's in your head often. It's
Yeah.
not really a circumstance that's going to change your life or affect you in a significant way. It's just grounding yourself, right?
Yeah, and it doesn't mean your problems are any less, but it's just reality. Like you have to understand, and that was actually today. Quite frankly, it's funny because today I was like sitting there and I'm talking, writing about, you know, being thankful for an abundance and all that kind of stuff, and then I'm like, God, I'm like, what you've given me is just amazing because there's so many, and I'm thinking about all these people out there that are just like, there's so many people that are just wondering where they're going to get enough money to buy dinner tonight for themselves and their kids. And they're wondering, man, are they going to be able to keep the heat on? Like, do they have enough money to pay that utility bill that is, past due and the utility company is threatening to shut the power off? Like, that's what they're focused on. And here I'm focused on, you know, things that are just totally different, right? Totally different. And it's I think it's so valuable to look at that. One of the things we like doing is volunteering for, organizations that help people in need because it gives you that sense of humility, like, okay, you know, I'm I'm it's not all that bad here. Right? Like
Yeah.
there's other people that have it way worse off. And when we look at people in the US and say they have it bad, like there's people all over the world that have it way worse than them, right? And so it's just amazing. Anyways, total
Love
side
it.
tangent. But
Love it.
well, cool, man. I
Good start.
appreciate you coming on the show, and I want to give you a quick intro, and then we'll dive in. So, for those of you who don't know Chris is the founder and CEO of Sterling Rhino Capital. He's been a full-time entrepreneur and real estate investor since 2007. He specializes in investor relationships, commercial debt, managing financials. Chris started his real estate career by renovating, flipping, building, renting dozens of single-family residents, in addition to running his own property management company. And he's currently focused on larger 100+ unit apartment buildings, doing some development as well. throughout the country. So he's got properties kind of all over, and we'll dive into that. He's also been and I'd love to dive into this topic, but been a TED X speaker and contributed to a lot of different things, Bigger Pockets, Forbes. He's an author, and man, just dude, you've a host of Create Your Own Fortune podcast. And last but not least, also the Unlikely Mentor. So, Chris, welcome to the show. Give our listeners, maybe wrap that up a little bit better. Give our listeners a little bit about your background. We'll dive in.
Awesome. Thank you so much for the intro. It's so great to sit down with you after many years of being in parallel paths and actually
Yeah.
not actually sitting down and having a good conversation. So I'm excited to talk with you and share with your audience today. Yeah, basically was a self-made guy. I know that term's thrown around a lot, but I was on my own at the age of 15 years old and
Oh,
just
wow.
struggled through life. Had these folks come into my life that I now call unlikely mentors, which is what I did my TED talk on. I'm very excited about that. It's a TEDx talk. And I've written several books, had fun in the real estate space, and we're doing that currently. As I built a sales and marketing career, early 20s to mid 30s, late 30s, I needed a place to put my money. So I started learning more about real estate. And that's where I got into like the single families, a little bit of land and things of that sort. Cause I was in the stock market. At least my CPA had kind of guided me to the stock market. And
Yep.
I was talking to a good friend and he said, man, you got to get in real estate. So I started learning more about that, absorbed a ton of books. I'm an avid reader, usually audiobooks when I'm at the gym. I allocate, I'm very efficient with allocating my time. And a lot of the time that is typically inefficient, like when you're at the gym, I'm listening to audiobooks and try to absorb content. So that has really helped me throughout my life, whether it be developing speaking skills, real estate skills, business plans, you name it. So did that, bought a couple single families. And then when I wanted to exit corporate America, I was basically running my own sales and marketing company as a contractor, but I represented several lines. And in order to exit that career, which was very stressful, great pay, but very stressful and time consuming, I needed to find a way. And one of those multiple streams of income I had created along the way was real estate. So that's where I really started to focus. And in order to get out, I had to scale. So I got into multifamily, and now we're into multifamily, value add, development, et cetera. And I'm also a speaker. So now I focus highly on real estate and then the speaking business. So that's what we're doing today. It's great.
So we'll jump into probably a lot of different things, but I want to talk about you're on your own at 15 years old.
Yeah.
Could
Yeah.
take me through as much of that journey as you want to unpack, but take me
Sure.
through like, man, at 15 years old, you're on your own. I feel like at 15 years old, if I would have been on my own, I would have been like, I don't know. I just don't know what would have happened at 15. I was so immature at that time. Like,
Yeah.
how did you get through and to the other side to where you're at right now, being alone at 15 or
Sure.
being on your own?
And I can sum it up too, because it's funny when you hear certain things in society. Let's say you hear homelessness, you hear I'm on my own
Yeah.
young age. It's very easy to go down a rabbit hole with the paradigm that you have in your head, the way you see the world, or the way you feel someone is homeless. It's very easy for you to articulate the way you see that. Example: on my own at 15, it sounds terrifying to someone who
Yeah.
had a white pick. Not you, Todd, but someone who had a white picket fence, mother, father, brothers, sisters, whatever, school, college, all the stuff. But for me, there were circumstances that were at play that actually worked in my favor to a certain extent. So let me articulate that. Uh, um, when I was on my own, it was because my mother got me out of Southern California at about 14 and a half ish. And I was being jumped, beat up, on my way to school. We were just broke, on and off of food stamps. Mom worked the best she could. Dad wasn't around much. They both had me when they were 15 years old. So they struggled, right? She did the best she could, moved me up to Southern Oregon, got me out of the circumstance, but then she went back to California. So I stayed with a family friend that was kind of supporting us, um, only for one night, and I decided I would be better out on my own. So I went out on my own. Now, the reason I say some circumstances fell into play that favored me was I was in Southern Oregon, and at that time, people left their keys in their cars, they left their windows down. It was a smaller community. It was much safer than the environment I grew up in California. And so it lent itself to an environment where I could sort of cultivate those survival skills, if you will, and not worry about being shot or jumped by gangs technically or whatever. I could sleep on sofas. I could work 3 part-time jobs. You know, I could do these things in this environment that probably would not have worked in Southern
Mm,
California. And I was homeless for a time, like sleeping couch surfing for years, slept at a few rest stops, whatever. But I wasn't homeless in the sense that you see today on TV, right?
yeah.
Uh, so if someone was to say on your own at 15, well, if you live in a certain community, that could be terrifying. And while it was somewhat terrifying for me, it wasn't like what you would think. Although it was a struggle, it helped me build character. And thankfully for a lot of these unlikely mentors that fell into my life, they put me on the right path and it really changed things significantly.
Mm.
So that's kind of the short story.
Were you going to school at that time still?
I tried. I was in and out of school. I probably finished, I may have finished 10th grade, went back, 11th grade, part time, dropped out, went back. Then 12th grade, same thing, went back, tried again, dropped out. I was working sometimes 2, 3 part time jobs here and there because I was young. I had a work permit at 15 and I was working at like Wendy's when I was like 15 and a half, 16 years old.
Wow.
And it just was impossible to make money. And by the way, like I was sleeping on couches. I remember a friend's mother let me sleep in her garage. They had it converted to like a makeshift apartment. You know, they had like the cots and the refrigerator and the stuff in there. So I would pay her power bill to live there. So like I remember it was like 75 to $100 a month and I could live in there. And it was great. I was like 16 and a half, 17 years old maybe at one point.
Hmm.
And I could give you lots of stories like that. But that was an example of where
Wow.
I would go to work, I'd come home, I tried to go to school, and it was a struggle, man. And I had no guidance really. I had no one to
Yeah.
say, here's what you need to do first. So for my youth years between probably 15 and 18, it was just sheer survival. Figure it out, eat, uh, you know, uh, try to find a place to live and just keep your head up. That was kind of it for 3 years, right?
What changed?
I did go back, by the way, though, Todd, and get my GED and take a couple classes in college and all that. I did that later in life, but anyways.
Love it. Love it. What changed? Like how when did you go from like that continually, going on 15 to 18, whatever, to all of a sudden being able to maybe it wasn't all of a sudden, but to being able
Yeah,
to actually afford a real place and
yeah.
to, start to change your life into the direction kind of you are in right now.
Yeah, sure. Well, it was funny because I went through these iterations, like I call them like different phases of life. Like, at one point when I was literally 16, this is funny because I was working at Orange Julius, right, in the mall. And I was staying with a married couple. They were young. They let me rent a room. I don't even remember. Maybe it was $100 a month or something.
Wow.
And I would get up in the morning and I would go to work every day. I'd walk to the mall. It was across the street under the freeway. And then I would come home. And I got this part-time job like cleaning furniture at a futon store. And I remember when I got that job, I was so proud. I was 16 years old and I wear a little tie and I'd wear my little, my little dress shirt and I'd walk to work every day as though I was in corporate America, right? And that lasted for a little while and then ended up, that place went out of business. And then I was on my own again, trying to figure it out. I couldn't pay the rent. I had to scramble and find different jobs. So different times I would think I was climbing, like I'm on my way. And then I would get knocked down and crushed and like scramble and try to figure things out. And then I'm at a new place and I'm at a new part-time job or whatever. And the real pivot in my life was around 18. After a bunch of those scenarios, I had a chance encounter with a guy that found me at a hot dog cart, and he became the first of my unlikely mentors and completely changed my life. Yeah,
Let's can we dive into that a little bit? Like what did he do?
yeah,
Like
sure.
what happened? Since I'm Yeah, this is fascinating, man. I love this story so far. This is fascinating. You could be a movie like so far, right? Right? Well, I think we're gonna
Yeah,
make a movie out of you. We're gonna script you.
that's funny. Yeah. Well, so I'm milling along. I think I was working part time when I got this hot dog cart job. I was working part time at a retail store, and a long story short, a girl I was dating that worked at another hardware store where there was a hot dog cart out front. I would sit there and wait for her to come out of work, and this guy would talk to me. He's a little bit older guy, he's maybe in his 50s or 60s. I'm like in my, I don't even know, I'm like 18 years old. And we just hit it off. He was just a nice guy, hot dog cart guy. And he said, hey, you'd be a great hot dog cart guy because of personality. We were just hitting it off, right? And he goes, My boss is going to be hiring someone at this other cart. I'm like, hot dog cart. Come on, come on. He's like, no, man. He's listen, this is what I make, and I get tips and he starts explaining to me. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. You make that kind of money at a hot dog cart? Like, this is crazy. So I interviewed with the guy and he hired me. And so now I'm working like 50 hours a week, which gosh, I never had stable 50-hour week income. And I'm my own boss kind of at this hot dog cart. We pick up the truck and we wheel the cart on and we do the thing all day, 6 days a week. But it was great money. And then I could make tips on my attitude and energy and enthusiasm. So I would go out there like with the sunglasses on and the apron on, and I would just be on fire, like having fun with it and a lot of energy, right? So that hot dog cart guy that hired me was kind of a mentor, but he was kind of gruff, old school. And at that hot dog cart, one Saturday afternoon, I had a line of about 20 people or so, and I was just cranking along. And this guy approaches me out of nowhere, and I actually talk about this in my TEDx talk. And he says, "Man, I need a guy like you." He says, "You got attitude, energy, enthusiasm, and it's something I can't teach." He's like, "So, I got to have you in my life, like basically." And I'm like, but like, what do you sell knives door to door or something? I'm like, why would you want a hot dog cart guy? I'm like, who are you? Like, you got to be, this is a
Yeah.
joke, right? And he says, no, you don't get it. And so I find out he is building a family fun center, which was like literally Disneyland coming to your community. That's what this was to our community. It was huge. And I'm like, you're kidding me. You're building that? And he's, yeah, yeah. So I go to work for him, and the guy, retired CPA, brilliant, hands-on, retired at 44 years old to go and
Mm,
build something great for his kids. And he's just a real estate guy. I mean, he had all these traits. So he says to me, you bring your attitude, energy, and skill set. I will teach you strong work ethic. I will teach you business. I will teach you how to read books and educate all this stuff. And man, did I take that to heart. I mean, I work 100+ hour weeks out at his property, out at the fun center. I helped him build it from scratch. So I learned a lot through that process. And it was just the right encounter. And what I learned early on, and I'll kind of close that with this, unless you have other questions about it, which is great. I love this journey I went through because it changed my life. But what I learned was the onus had to be on me the whole time. I was always going through life figuring out, how do I survive? How do I survive? How can people help me? What can I get? And I realized at that moment, like the onus has to be on me. My energy, my attitude, my enthusiasm is what drew this guy in, which is part of the unlikely mentor concept that I've developed now is like, how do we draw people in that will change our lives, right? Which is really kind of giving if you think about it, because we are giving our energy, our attitude, our enthusiasm to the world, and people are gravitating towards us for that reason. And then we can show our craft, our skill set at that point, right? And I found that with him, and he recognized that, he cultivated that energy and built me. He carved me into somebody that would eventually go out and build a phenomenal sales career. He's the one who told me to go get into sales. I'm like, sales? Why would I do that? He's like, you're wasting your time here. 3 years later, he says, you're wasting your time here. You need to be selling. I'm like, okay, what do I sell? And then he pushed me along, and I went out and built amazing sales career. So that's the hot dog cart transition.
that is fascinating. That is awesome. Like I said, we're gonna make a movie out of this. This is that's really cool. Here's where I think when you just look at that, having an infectious personality, right, brings opportunity. Just being, and you were out there, you're doing your thing, you have positive attitude, and it brings people to you. It attracts people to you, right? And that's just how it is. So if you can go about life with a good personality, open, energetic, and you don't need to be you, right? You need to be or Chris, right? You need to be yourself, but you could have that open, energetic, positive attitude. People are going to get attracted to you. It's just how it is.
Oh, 100%. I could give you so many examples of how being outgoing and smiling and reaching out to people and just showing
Yeah.
that I cared or that I was curious yielded me massive returns and not even trying. I'm talking like my first real estate deal that I made like $1.2 million on, right? Was a result of just what we're talking about. I made a 5-minute phone call one time, and made a 7-figure return on a 5-minute phone call,
Wow.
just for a referral to somebody. And this was because my credibility and my charisma and like my relationships with people, right? And there's so many examples of opportunities, jobs, whatever. So no, 100%. I mean, if I was to give somebody a piece of advice, it would be get out of your head, right? And start to exude the kind of person that you know you can be, that you should be, that the world needs. Be that person every day, and things will just start to happen, right? It's not like luck just happens to lucky people. You really do develop your own luck from your energy. And I have found that because there's no reason I should be successful. There just isn't, right?
Yeah.
When you look back at everything I went through.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I mean, if you look back at what you went through, you should be on the street still. You
sure.
should be, doing drugs. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the statistic, right? I mean, if
Yeah.
you look at people
Yeah.
who, kids who had your type of um, circumstance happen to them, that's what they would be. They'd be in and out of
Mhm.
prison. They'd be, on the streets. They'd be doing drugs. That type of thing. They're not running businesses and going on to podcasts and doing a TED Talk, right? Talk to me about the TED Talk. So, what
Yeah.
did you talk about? I think we already kind of started that conversation, but what did you talk about and how did you get an opportunity to do a TED Talk?
Yeah, Todd, because you're in the real estate business just like I am. We develop, we buy buildings, we renovate. There's all these challenges that come along, and our world is problem solving, right? Our whole world all the
Yeah.
time is problem solving. Um, and you hear people talk about setting goals. Oh, you got to set a goal, and most of the time, people are afraid to set audacious goals. Like I'll give you a couple of mine. I was terrified of heights. So I learned how to rappel and climb mountains and cross crevasses. And now I've done it a bunch of times. It's terrifying, but now it's not terrifying. Like speaking, right? Actually, heights and speaking are the top two. And I overcame both of those when I had no reason to overcome either one of them. Didn't
Yeah.
need to, was
Yeah.
successful. However you deem success, I figured I reached it, right? I didn't need those things. But for me to continue to feel fulfilled and help others and keep pushing, I had to overcome. So I'm going to just give you the speaking example. When I was a kid, I was terrified to raise my hand in school because I was like stupid. I was embarrassed. I had no self-esteem. I didn't feel worthy. And so I would get the answers wrong all the time. And I finally just gave up. Well, you don't learn if you're not trying, but I didn't have anyone to encourage me. So it was like, I just gave up and skipped school and things like that. Um, but I realized in my life as I built my sales career, I was good at having conversations because I was genuine and I was honest and I had energy and people like that, right? So I realized, well, I could do a lot with that in the sales world. And I took territories from 0 to like $10 million in a year,
Mm.
huge commissions. I had a $30 million territory at one point. I did all kinds of amazing things, won all these awards and did all this stuff. And so I realized like, I need to take this and actually help others with this, whatever this is. So I started doing presentations to our divisions, and I would eventually be speaking in front of 2,000 people, sharing insights, talking about tactics that I developed or teaching on sales trainings and things like that. And all of a sudden I started realizing, well, there's value here. How do I change the world? How do I leave my mark? And as I developed this unlikely mentor concept, I thought, I have grown so much listening to TED Talks, and they've done so much for me in my personal growth and development. It was a dream of mine to be able to get on that stage, and it was absolutely terrifying to even think about trying to get on that stage. So I thought, well, this is perfect, right? I've always wanted to make a difference. It's a huge stage, made an impact in my life, and I'm terrified to do it. I got to do it. So I hired a coach to kind of help me navigate those waters.
Mm.
He showed me how to apply to these places, which isn't rocket science, but
Yeah.
he showed me how to craft the right um, through line and messaging and things of that sort. And we worked on the concept for probably 18 months. I took my time. I could have done it a lot quicker, but I took my time because I wanted to be right. And we started applying. And after about 5 applications or so, and one interview, and I didn't make it. I made it to the finals. I got accepted. And then I did my TED Talk in October of last year. to about 800 people in a beautiful little theater called the Bing Crosby Theater. It was just as amazing as I had imagined it. And what's amazing, Todd, is I prepared so much for this talk, so much. Like I could give you stats you just literally wouldn't believe a human being would dedicate, like the time and the energy. But when I walked out on that stage, I had no fear, zero fear, terrified up until about 2 weeks before, almost quit a couple times. But when I got up on that stage, I had done so much preparation that I was ready to crush it. And I was told I crushed it. Like I think it has 120, 30,000 views already in the first
Oh,
five
wow.
weeks. I mean, we're starting to take off, right? The comments is what excites me, not even the views. The comments from people. They're watching the whole video. They're making comments on parts of the video that they resonate with, right? Oh, unlikely mentors, and oh, this happened, and oh yeah, if you're uncomfortable, you're on the right track. That's perfect. It's exactly what I think. So it's been a lot of fun, and the goal was for us to impact 1 million lives with that video. Obviously, it's on the TED's YouTube site, so I don't monetize it or anything. I make no money off it. But we are fulfilling the goal of reaching 1 million people. We're on our way, and that was the goal all along, and also to try to overcome a fear, which I did.
That's awesome. I love that you did that. I love, and definitely if, look, if you fear something, just conquer it. And
Yeah,
I
go
think
for
that
it.
you said you wouldn't have had to, right? You wouldn't have had to conquer your fear of heights. You wouldn't have had to conquer your fear of speaking, public speaking, but you actually did. Like you
Hmm.
did to become who you're becoming, right? Because otherwise it would have probably just bothered you. It would have continued to bother you. And you're a person that just takes action and wants results. I think that's when I look at people I've mentored in the past and I say, why are certain people successful? Why are other people not? You've got that personality. We talked before we jumped on and started recording. You talked about how you got into real estate and you talked about how you just engulfed content. You just like swallowed the content up, right? You jumped in with both feet. You weren't like, let me see, let's just poke in there and see what's going on. I know you're like, hey, I'm gonna. You hired a mentor. You did everything right, and you took massive action really quickly. And how quickly when you not real estate, I guess when you decided you're going to do multifamily, large multifamily from when you started to when you bought your first asset, how long was that?
What multifamily? My decision to get into multifamily, I would say by the time I had a deal, 100+ unit multifamily apartment complex that I was actually a partner on, it was about 2 weeks.
Yeah.
I would say 3 weeks, because for about a week I was absorbing content, and then I went to a big event, and then from that event it was about 2 weeks, and I had a deal locked up. It was a like a $4 million 100+ unit multifamily deal.
See,
Yeah,
and I'm not telling people, hey, you got to go Chris's pace, right?
yeah,
You got to go your pace. But at the
yeah.
same time, there's a lesson to be learned with Chris's pace. When I coach somebody and I say, hey, I need you to read these 3 books, and I come back to them in a week or 2 weeks, whatever time it was, and I said, hey, have you read anything of those books? What'd you think? And they're like, yeah, I read those books and I read 6 more. That's the guy I'm like, you're going to be successful, guaranteed,
Yeah.
right there. Because when I say, hey, call 4 brokers and you call 8 brokers, it's like, yeah, because you're taking massive action quickly and you're going to get big results. And same thing when you talk about the TED Act, like you took big action to get those results. And there's not many people that have been able to get up on that stage and do what you did. And now you're impacting a ton of lives. Let's talk about unlikely mentor. You keep on mentioning it. I'm very curious of what it actually is and what you mean by it.
Yeah. Thank you for the question. The unlikely mentor came from my concept of somebody in life that maybe you can't afford to pay, right? Because many of us, when we're going through, we don't have a bunch of money or even access to these kinds of people. So this unlikely mentor concept stemmed from my experience, like with the family fun center guy. He was drawn in with my energy and enthusiasm, and I showed him that I was going to show up and I was going to put in the work, and he influenced me. But if you called him a mentor, he'd probably throw a beer bottle at you. Like, I mean, he's not a mentor. Like he would tell you, like, I'm not, right? So, and there's so many in my life that have come through that I identify not really as mentors. They're unlikely mentors. They're people outside of my circle of influence that I would have never hired or looked at as a mentor, even if I could afford it. But they made a significant impact. In my talk, I outlined 5 different sort of scenarios where this unlikely mentor concept crosses paths in my life. And, if you think about it this way, a mentor might be somebody that you hire. There's more of a formal structure, right? There's a process. I just started at this company and they're giving me so and so to mentor me and teach me the way. But the problem with that is that there's no time spent building the real, genuine relationships. And we don't even know if that'll be a good fit, right? Like just because
Right.
you are my mentor, because corporate America told me you're going to be my mentor, doesn't mean I'm going to resonate with you and it's going to work, or I'm going to absorb what you're throwing out and et cetera. Whereas unlikely mentors are a little bit more organic, right? They're a little more natural. They flow a little bit better. In most cases, they don't cost you anything, but the onus is on the mentee. That person who is seeking these people to change their lives has to show up. They have to bring the right attitude, the right energy, the right work ethic. Otherwise, they'll never be noticed. So the idea behind this really is, these people are all around us. Your significant other could be your unlikely mentor. Family, mothers, fathers are not always the best mentors, believe it or not.
Mm,
Although
yeah.
we are told your parents should mentor you, they are not always the best mentors. In many cases, it's because they have a very specific frame of reference that they're mentoring from, let's say, right? Whereas you start absorbing people outside the circle and you go, wait a minute, there's a broader spectrum out here that could influence me in a positive way. So that's kind of the short of the concept of unlikely mentors. And there's a lot more to it, but that's the idea. And we have basically 3 things. It's identify, adopt, and engage. So you identify one person outside your circle of influence that you aspire to be like. You adopt the habits, right? And you try to do exactly what they're doing in a sense, and then you engage them eventually, right? You show a genuine interest in what they're doing. You offer your time. You offer your good attitude to help and assist, etc. And with these 3 things, and there's much more to this, but with these 3 things, you can start to draw in these people that otherwise probably would have never even noticed you.
Yeah. So I can see the identify. Like I can so say, hey, this person's doing exactly what I want to do. Like so we can identify to say this person's doing things that where I want to get to, they're there right now. Right. So that's part of the identifying process, right? That's who we're looking for.
Yep. Yep.
And the adopt, okay, we can look at what they're doing, we can try to do what they're doing, but the engage, that's the part that is the difficult part. Like if I
Mhm.
wanted to engage with somebody, especially if they're very successful, let's just say this person is extremely successful. Um, like what how do you go about engaging somebody that is
Yeah.
hard to reach?
Well, that is such a good question. The reason I love the question is because if you think about it, the only way to get to engagement is to follow the first 2 steps. And honestly, you could tweak these steps to call them whatever you want to call them,
Yeah.
right? But you have to identify somebody. You have to sort of adopt or transform. Remember, I talked earlier about it, the onus being on the person, the individual that wants change, right? They're trying
Yeah.
to draw people in. So, in order for you to, let's use an example. I can use an example of a president of a company I worked for one time where he was the guy. If you were close to him, like you were probably pretty safe and you probably earned his respect and he was really intelligent. Like you'd want to be close to him if you could. Um, what I did was I identified that's an individual I'd love to be like. The guy's like untouchable. Everyone's terrified to talk to him because he's so smart and he's so. I looked at it like, man, how do I get closer to him? Right. But I'm just a cog in the wheel of 500 sales reps. How am I going to get to know him? So I identified that. I adopted some of the things he did. I started looking at some of the ways he taught, some of the things he said. I started showing up more. Matter of fact, I would show up at 5 in the morning to the showroom every day. Why? Because he was there at
Mhm.
5:30 every day. And we were the only ones there. So guess who he noticed when he came in? Me, right? And what was I doing? I was doing things to help the team in the morning. And he say, "What are you doing?" "Oh, I'm doing photography for the new products." "Well, why are you doing that?" "We do that." I say, "Yeah, but the company doesn't come out with photography for 3 to 4 weeks after the show. And I do it so that I can come out with it a few days. And that gives us 3 more weeks to be on the road selling products and getting ahead of our competitors." You see? So now I'm having this conversation with the president of a $5 billion company, and I'm nobody. So all of a sudden, years of this, he starts to recognize, well, guess what? He needs somebody on some sort of board or committee. He reaches out to my VP. Chris would be the guy. All of a sudden, I'm in a room with him, right? And I was nobody. So the point is, I adopted things he did and I identified what I needed to do to get in front of him and get noticed. And I did. And I'm giving you one example. There was many, right? So then now I'm engaging him, right? And I'm showing him that I'm showing up and I've earned his respect and he's giving me time, right? And now I can pave my own way. Like, how far do I want to do this? Do I want a vice president job someday? I mean, because I may be the kind of guy that he says, man, this guy's got the work ethic. What do you want? And so the bottom line is, like, from there, opportunities started flying my way. I mean, I probably could have been in upper management at some point, right? But I didn't want to go down that path because I love being independent. So my point is, it is important to identify, adopt, and engage, because the adoption helps you change your way of thinking. I am not going to be who I am today because it's not working. I'm not drawing people in. So if I adopt what the people are doing that I want to be like, then maybe they'll notice me more. And now I can get into that circle of influence and change my life. That's just one example. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I love that. I think, and thanks for taking me through the story, because the story really helps just unfold it, right? Unpack it and understand, okay, yeah, I could actually do that. Like this makes sense. Just sometimes telling stories really help bring us closer. Chris, man, I got so many more questions. We're gonna have to do a second episode
I love it.
one of these days here, because we haven't even touched the real estate journey, or barely. Like we just scratched the surface.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
You got a lot of real estate going on, and
yeah.
you guys are doing development. You guys have value add. So you got a lot of stuff going on the real estate world. But we're not even going to go there right now. Okay. So just so people look, listeners, Chris is a fascinating guy. You've already seen that, and he's got a lot going on. So obviously go to find his TED Talk, and we'll link that to the show notes, and then check out his website, and we'll get that at the end of the show. But Chris, what's a mistake that you've made along your journey, and how can you teach our listeners, about that?
Todd, we probably need 4 more episodes for my
Yeah,
mistakes.
let's
But
book like 6 in a row,
I'll
okay?
get, yeah, yeah, I'll give you, you're right. I'll give you one. I love it, by the way. This has been great. There's many, but I would say in my adult career, as I built my sales and as I built my real estate portfolio, it was not properly vetting people, partners, vendors,
Mm,
having too much trust, on what people say, or, some sort of shallow referral they give you or whatever it may be. I learned as we got into this bigger space that it's very important, whether it be background checks or multiple references and references of references, or showing proof of concept. I mean, versus just taking people's word for it. There's a lot of talkers out there and a lot of stats that make you warm and fuzzy, but
yes.
behind the surface, there's some pretty alarming things that you find out about people, partners, vendors, construction guys, whatever. So I'd say in this space, in reference to real estate, that's that. But I have dozens of things I've learned and mistakes I've made for sure. Some have
Yeah.
cost me. Some were just maybe be it ego or affected my attitude, my energy for the day. But hey, we got to learn. Mistakes make us who we are.
Yeah, mistakes happen, but yeah, I love that one. For not properly vetting people, I mean, I almost, partnered with a couple guys who would have been probably terrible decision for me to partner with, and likely would have changed my reputation, and reputation is everything, right? And so you get into business with somebody that has a negative reputation and maybe does some negative things. All of a sudden, that's your reputation, and that's just
Mhm.
not what you want to do. And because the deal was so good, I was not paying attention to who they were. Luckily, I just had this weird feeling about things and ended up not going forward. And I'm really happy because I've learned a lot of things about those people that I was
Good for
really
you.
happy I didn't do business with. But those are lessons, you continue to learn, and it's not. I've gotten on the unfortunate side of it plenty of times, so I love that. Properly vet people. Chris,
Yeah.
favorite book you can recommend to our listeners?
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. I think in the last 4 months or so, maybe I've absorbed like no, 4 months maybe, yeah, like 70 books. I mean, I absorb so much content, but a lot of it's audiobooks, but, the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People
Yeah,
and How to Win Friends and Influence People. I know it's 2 books, but the reason I always bring those up is they had nothing to do with real estate, but they completely changed the way I looked at other people and helped me to build my relationships. So, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People and How to Win Friends and Influence People. Um, All-time favorites among many, many others in different sectors like real estate and such, but in speaking even, but those books, today I still read them.
probably my number one recommended book and favorite book. In fact, I just recommended it on Monday of this week, is How to Win Friends and Influence People. Love that book. It's
Huge.
it's so simple, right? It's so
Yeah.
so simple. But
Yeah.
that's why it's such a good book. Is it's super simple to read, it's super easy to understand, but it gives you just great tips and that you just I think just need to think about at times, right? It's not like
Oh,
it's
yeah.
anything like
Yeah.
earth-shattering in
Yeah.
the book. And it's like a lot of the stuff is like, well, duh, right? But it's like, well, I don't do that though.
Yeah. Well, Todd, we talked about it earlier, which was putting things in perspective because
Yeah,
we get knocked out of perspective oftentimes, right? With our lives, our daily lives, we get content and it's like, oh, yeah, things, and then, oh, woe is me, woe is me. But you start reading these stories and understanding where people have been 100 years ago and what they went through, and you go, okay, wait a minute, things aren't so bad.
yeah,
So absolutely,
love
absolutely.
it, love it. Last question. What are your three pillars of wealth creation?
Three pillars of wealth creation. There's lots of things along the way that have helped me, but I'd say the first is remaining open to the influence of others, and then seeking out those connections, right? This is something I learned in one of those books, kind of being open to the influence of others, right? And just not having an ego and pushing and trying so hard. Just be open to others.
Love it.
And then allocating some of my downtime to creating multiple streams of income. That's a huge one I learned along the way in corporate America because nothing is guaranteed. So become very efficient with your time because believe it or not, you actually have a lot of time, and then use some of that time to create multiple streams of income. And then the last thing, which again is in one of my originals, is continual education and engaging with others. And that's huge because it's very easy to get caught up in the latest Game of Thrones show or golf or whatever it is, and you realize that you are not paying yourself first when you invest. You
Yeah.
are not educating yourself and spending any time on your mind. And so I continually have to work on these three things, but they definitely are the pillars to my success.
Yeah, love those, love those. Chris, man, this has been fantastic. Just from starting, going through your journey as a 15-year-old, kind of just being out and bouncing from job to job and place to place, and meeting the guy at the hot dog stand. That kind of course maybe changed your course and trajectory, and just obviously the TED Talk and uh, everything, the unlikely mentors. Man, this has been fantastic. So really appreciate the time, appreciate what you've done. Like I said, I got to have you back on. We got to talk more about your real estate business. We didn't talk about that. But how can our listeners get in touch with you? Learn more about what you got going on. Where do you want to send them?
Yeah, it's great. Thank you, man. Well, you can always visit the website, which is Chris D as in David Roberts.com. So Chris D Roberts.com. If you want to know more about our real estate stuff, like you said, we're going to get back on again, which I'm looking forward to. We're Sterling Rhino Capital.com. Sterling Rhino Capital.com. And then, check out the TED Talk. You can look me up. You'll probably find me on TEDx if you go to their website and look up Unlikely Mentors, Chris Roberts. But you can also go straight to the talk at chrisrobertstedx.com. That'll take you right to the talk. So
Awesome.
I'm an open book. Look forward to helping your listeners in any way I can, even if it's just to answer questions to help them, whether it be speaking or life or overcoming adversity. And then maybe next time we can dig into real estate a little more. Again, I've helped a lot of people in that space as well. So Todd, I really appreciate it. Thanks for the kind words, and really enjoyed talking with you today.
Chris, we're going to climb some mountains together. Maybe we'll do the podcast at the top of
Love
a
it.
mountain.
Love it.
That'll
Oh,
be the
buddy.
next one.
Yeah. Let's do it.
Cool. All right. Thanks. Take care.
Thanks, man.
Hey, thanks so much for listening. I appreciate you being a loyal listener. Say, I would love to have you go on to our Facebook page and subscribe. Give us a thumbs up. Go on to iTunes or wherever you listen and give us a rating and review. Don't forget to subscribe. Your rating and review just helps us push this out to more and more people and continue to grow our audience and hopefully positively affect a ton of people out there that really need this and want this. So the other thing I've got for you is a free ebook on my website. So go on to venturedproperties.com, venturedproperties.com, and download our free ebook on real estate and on syndication. And I've got some data points in there, some really good stuff for you. So I'd love to have you take a look at that. It's free. I'm not expecting anything from it. And also, look, if you want some help in multifamily, want some help learning, growing, getting your business off the ground, I would love to talk to you about what it would look like to work with me potentially and see if that's a good fit. So you can go to coachwithdex.com and check that out, and we can definitely have a call. Thanks a lot for listening. You make it a fantastic rest of the day. I'll catch you on the next episode.